Hey everybody. Thank you for joining. We'll be starting in a few minutes. If you're supposed to be a panelist, please raise your hand. Hey Kaiser, thank you so much for joining.
Hi, glad to be here. Let me know. I think you said I have 20 minutes. I didn't know which part of the agenda I was on, so just let me know.
You're at Community Connections. So
Okay,
it's the welcome, the approval of agenda, elected officials update, and then you're up.
cool. Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Also, do we have anybody here from Jazz Power Initiative? If you are, please raise your hand if you didn't get a panelist link. So hello, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. My name is Tanisha Grant. I'm the executive director. I am the chair of youth and education. Sorry, I got my hats a little mixed up. It's been a long day. I am the there I go again. I am the chair of Youth and Education Committee here at Community Board 12. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We have a full meeting scheduled and we're starting with quorum. And so I love that. So that is the end of my welcome. And can I get a motion to approve can I get what's it called? A second?
Second, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Agenda approved. Also, we're starting the meeting at, what time is it?
6:41.
6:41. We're calling the meeting to order. You don't know how many late Robin was, but okay, so it's really important to us, especially in budget season, that we have our elected officials and or their representatives come and speak to us. The state budget is late, surprise. And we know that we have the city budget coming up, but I just want to first give the floor to Johanna because she is the chief of staff for our Senator Robert Jackson to give us an update on what the budget is looking like, especially when it's concerning education. Johanna?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Chair, for inviting me to speak to the Youth and Ed Committee, SCB 12 tonight. Yes, unfortunately, the budget is late. More unfortunately, it is not a surprise to many of us that work in the legislature that is late. But conversations right now in regards to education are centering around some very important issues that impact our schools and our students. That includes, of course, mayoral control, what that's going to look like. Mayoral control is what the governance model for New York City, the largest school district in the nation. It is a model that was started under the Bloomberg administration. It is something that's scheduled to sunset at the end of June. So there are conversations about what to do about mayor control. Do we change it? Do we modify it? If we do extend it, for how long? The city administration wants to renew it for 4 years. The legislature seems to have be engaging in conversations that if it is extended, renewed, that it only be for 2 years with caveats that include conditions of accountability for class size reduction. We know that reduction is a law that passed a couple years ago. As well as what does the governance look like? Will we still have a majority of mayoral appointees on the PEP? How do we engage more stronger voices from parents and students in the governance of our school system? And when we talk about governance, we're not just talking about the PEP, which is the Panel for Education Policy, but it also includes CECs, school leadership teams. What does that look like? And engaging everyone. Besides that, we're also having conversations about the foundation aid formula. More often on the city level, we hear about the fair student funding formula. But on the state level, that's the foundation aid. And that's the money that trickles down to our schools. And right now, we know that the foundation aid formula is way too antiquated to really address the realities that we find in our schools. Those realities being a high concentration of students that need a great deal of support. And that includes students with disabilities, students whose language, English is a second language to them, students who are experiencing homelessness. So just like the foundation aid formula has weights, and depending on those weights per school, it kind of determines what that school budget will look like. The foundation aid is very similar. It's kind of, we think about it like the umbrella of fair student funding. So right now we're looking at how we tweak the formula so that it's more responsive on a school level. I want to pause there to see if there's any questions. I know this is youth and education, but I do also want to mention that there are also conversations of supporting students in CUNY and SUNY, because those are very much a part of education priorities for the legislature as well.
And thank you so much, Johanna. I don't know if I have a question or a statement, but I think it's really important that y'all are talking about like what does engagement look like? Because for me, like engagement is the floor. Like we need parent empowerment. Um, so you know, we keep hearing for 25 years. 26. I have heard that we have mayoral control for accountability, but we're not holding nobody accountable, Johanna. So I hope that there are talks about, real, penalties, real problems, when these things aren't put into place, especially for things like, SLT funds for Title I schools, where the parents don't even know that there's a pot of money for them to say what they want to do with them. Or the parents don't even know that when they're on the SLT, that means that they're supposed to have input in the principal's budget. And when these things don't happen, and when the principal or the school just takes the money and uses it for whatever, there's never any accountability. So I hope that, there are talks about like real life consequences, because we could never. We could
Yeah,
never.
those are conversations. Those are conversations 110, like I want to say 1,000% agree with you, Tanisha. Those are conversations that Senator Jackson has held with both the chancellor and the mayor directly, that there must be, if there's any conversation about renewing mayor control for any length of time, that it has to go hand in hand with accountability and giving parents and students and teachers, the actual consumers of our public education system, a bigger voice in how resources are allocated. Even as you know, these huge budgets that go before the PEP, and a great deal more of transparency.
Yes, and the last thing that I'll say before I turn it over to my colleagues, because they're very smart people and I know that they have questions. When it comes to the PEP, there's also something that we have to talk about there too. The fact that our family members and students and things of that nature cannot testify online is a real problem. I got it on good information. It's because it might take longer for the PEP to be there. And my thing is, don't sign up for the job if you don't want to do it. I think that it's very horrible that we are not thinking about this whole new world that we got, where we can go hybrid and we can allow, our school community to testify in the comfort of their home, especially when we know it's always on a school night. I have parents who are taking parents and children from the Bronx to Staten Island to, you know what I'm saying, Upper Manhattan. If that could be, if you could take that back to Senator Jackson and tell him how taxing it is, that's not equitable. That's not equitable at all. And to force people to come in for 2 minutes and then, I just think it would be very beneficial if somehow we change that law of in-person only, because that is not okay. And we know how these meetings go. And I just think it shows the lack of consideration for our for our school families. So if that's something you could take back, because it's been a problem. I get mad that I can't testify online, because during the pandemic you could, and now they have taken that away from us. And if we can have hybrid meetings in the community board, if we can have hybrid meetings on the CEC level, I don't understand why we can't have hybrid meetings at PEP where people can testify online.
Absolutely. Accessibility is important, and centering families that can't make it and have like multiple children and responsibilities and non-traditional work hours, it's a must to really center that around these populations. Thank you for that feedback.
Thank you. Al?
So thank you. So Joanna, I had a question concerning school governance
Mhm.
and bringing up the CECs, the local community education council. It's my understanding, and I may be wrong on this, is that some time ago, there was provisions made to appoint 16 and 17-year-olds to CECs, however, without the right to vote. So I want to know if that's accurate, and if it is accurate, how that came about to not allow them to vote.
I don't know the history of how that came about. It is true, it hasn't changed in terms of the voting privilege. But just judging the history of education in New York City, I think the way that it came about is that they added a student rep seat to placate the community, but not really give it significant power, right? I think that's what happened. I think that's what happens all too often with our young people and young participation. It's like, we want you to feel important so you can have a seat at the table, but mom, don't talk. We can hear your opinion, but it has no weight. So definitely, I'm making a safe assumption that that's the genesis of it, because historically that is how education policies have evolved over time, and it's been the crux of many parents and many students fight to have a bigger voice in these processes.
So can that decision be changed? And if it can, how would that happen?
Through legislation. The CEC is I believe, a state. It's a result of state statute. So I'd have to look and see what part of the regs need to be amended to give students a bigger voice. And I think it will incentivize them, because CECs, just like community boards and PEPs, often occur in the evening. And why would a student sign up for it if their vote doesn't even count when it matters?
Thank you, Joanna.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Dee, got anything? Edwin? Mara? You good? You okay? Yeah.
I have a
But I
question
really-
online, Tanisha, if that's all right. This is Stefan.
Oh, come on, Stefan. Hi.
Hi. Sorry I couldn't be in person today.
You right, you
Um,
did tell me you was gonna be. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm sorry, I can't see you because you don't
No,
got
it's
your
all
camera
good.
on.
Here, let me turn it on. I'm like, anyway. Hi, Joanna. Thanks for the update
Hi.
and for coming in today. Quick question on the status of class size reduction. I know Chancellor Samuels went up to Albany recently and asked for that extension. And I know that Senator Jackson has been, outspoken about accountability there. I'm wondering what the Senate stance in general is. Do you think there will be action on this in this budget? Just want to get a sense of where we're at with that specifically.
Stefan, is your question, will the legislature respond to the chancellor's request that we slightly modify the benchmarks as to the timeline for meeting class size? That's your question?
Precisely, yes.
Okay. So those conversations are being led by the chair of the Education Committee, which is Senator John Liu from Queens. And he has publicly shared that he's open to considering slightly tweaking the timeline, as long as there's a concrete plan of how to actually meet whatever's going to be modified. And the modification seems, I think, in increments of 10%. So instead of 80%, then 70%. He said he's open to it as long as there is a concrete plan. And so what that plan is remains to be seen, and it's part of negotiations and budget talks.
Got it. Thank you.
And I just want to add, Stefan, if ever the committee wants a deeper conversation on class size and the recommendations, I co-chaired the chancellor's task force on that, that came up with the recommendations, which we spoke to the current chancellor about. I'd be happy to do that sometime in the future.
Yes,
I would love that. Yeah.
let's, maybe June?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so it's a date. We'll put you on the calendar for June for a
Awesome.
class size presentation from your perspective, because we have Leonie come here. But
Right.
that's different from her organization to,
Yes,
the
I
task
was,
force that y'all
yep.
have.
Yes, I was co-chair. She was a member, and this was a citywide task force.
Do we think, aren't we like advocating to bring that back or to um look at closely more at
There's
the recommendation? Because I feel like nothing y'all told them did they implement.
Right. There is talk about bringing it back and having a conversation together with the Fair Student Funding Formula, because as you know, reducing class size for some schools is claimed is difficult because of the funding formula. So because principals are incentivized to pack their classes, right? Because every student represents um their own budget money, right? So if you reduce by a certain number, like one class has maybe 18 students and then you only have 12 left, then how do you then pay for that teacher? So there's conversations about also shifting how the funding works on a school level so that it isn't these aren't unfortunate trade-offs or that schools say they can't do it. So definitely.
Yeah. And before you go, last question, I promise. So, does the senator's office have an idea about how many schools SCA is supposed to build in District 6? I know that we have been advocating for standalone schools. I myself have four grandchildren with autism, and they all have to be bused out of the community. So it would be amazing if we could get some schools, sent, within the limits of the class size law, that we really push to have standalone schools built in our community to serve some of our children that learn differently, because there's not enough support. And also, Nest and
Mhm.
Horizon programs don't work for all autistic children. My
You
oldest
agree.
son is nonverbal and he needs more support. And D75, where we put everybody together, is also not sustainable. So if you could take that back to the senator too, and give us any feedback on if there's conversations about that, because we also plan to invite SCA to come here and tell us about their plans to build in our community.
Excellent. I think it's an excellent idea to invite SCA. One of the recommendations under the class size task force was that SCA obtain and practice first right of refusal, which means when a parochial school closes or any other property that is owned by the city, before you have a charter school swoop in, that we have a policy in place where SCA has the first right to refusal. SCA looks at that building or that space and is the first one to say, okay, will this work? And can we incorporate it in our portfolio to open up a school? And only if they refuse can then it be opened up to the market. But they should have first right of refusal.
Thank you.
So, yeah, so in the future, we can talk about even creating a task force or whatever, so we can actually identify sites for SCA, and then send them a letter saying that we want them to do a tour of District 6 and explore these sites to consider opening the schools that our community wants.
Erwin?
Hi, Joanna Irwin here. Quick
Hi,
question
Erwin.
about the SCA and that right of refusal. How often do they actually exercise, from your experience, or how often do you see that they exercise it? The right to refusal, or is it something that it's kind of on paper, but it's not used in practice much? I don't know. I'm just wondering about that.
Neither, Erwin. Like we have to push them. And also SCA, if we think that I know there's a great deal of concern of the DOE, New York City Public Schools, not being transparent. SCA is a whole other ball game. They control the real estate. Their budget is different. Sometimes what I found when I was on the class size task force, I was surprised to see that sometimes it just felt like the DOE and the SCA weren't even talking to each other. And so you'll have a conversation with DOE about facilities, and then you have a different kind of conversation with SCA. Having that task force did force them to have more conversations. But Erwin, that's something we have to push for, that they
This is like
actually,
more of a community thing, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, all right, got it. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
Thank you, Miss.
Okay, do we have any questions in the audience? Jay? The physical audience and the audience online? Just trying to be more. Equitable. Yeah. We have any questions? Thank you so much. And look, we got 16 people on. Hey, y'all. Thank you so much, Johanna. So we'll schedule you for June, and then we always talk offline. So we'll follow up, and I'll keep the committee updated. But thank you for all your advocacy, everything that you do as chief of staff and in your personal, capacity, just as a mother and, in our community who's been here all your life. We really, really appreciate you, and we appreciate that we can trust and depend on what you say to us. Thank you so much.
Take care. Thank you for the work you all do. I appreciate it.
Thank
Bye.
you. Okay, so next we have Justin from Carmen's office, from our City Council, Carmen De La Rosa office. Okay, Kaiser, after this report, you'll be on. Justin, are you here? He's there.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey.
I don't have anything to present. I'm just here to just see what's going on in the community and hopefully bring back key details to the council member. So I'm really happy to be here.
Okay, thank you. I know that I think that I talked to James, Carmen's chief of staff, and he said that they're going to come report on the budget next month because the budget for the city is due the end of June. So when I asked him to come this month, he said it's kind of too early, so that they'll come next month. Thank you, Justin. Okay, so next, so is Jazz Power Initiative here? Because they're on they are on the, what you call it? So next on our agenda, they're on the agenda. She's here?
No, I'm saying like that's who's
That's what's
supposed to.
supposed to be.
Okay, well, when Kaiser comes back, she can present.
Hi, so sorry about that.
No problem, Kaiser. You gotta do what you gotta do. Jay, make sure that she has co-hosts.
Okay.
I think I do. I see that I can share slides. So first, let me just introduce myself. Hi, everybody. I'm Kaiser. She, her pronouns. I'm from the Alliance for Quality Education. And thank you so much, Chair Grant, for inviting me tonight to talk about solutions, not suspensions, and also childcare, two issues that AQE has been organizing around for years with incredible parent leaders like Tanisha. And particularly right now, because we are in budget season, is a really critical time for both of these issues. So I'm going to share screen and go through both of them. Just let me know if you can see that. You should be able to see it full screen now, yes? I can only see two of you right now, so if one of you who I can see could give me a
Yes, we can see.
Oh, perfect, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so first, just to tell you about us, AQE, the Alliance for Quality Education, is a coalition mobilizing communities across the state to keep New York true to its promise of ensuring a high-quality public education to all students, regardless of zip code. AQE is working to end the systemic racism and economic oppression in New York's public schools that continue to shortchange generations of Black, Brown, low-income, and immigrant students. So we were actually founded around the fight for the foundation aid formula that Jenna Garcia was talking about. And from there, we moved on to do a lot of other work as well, because there's so much work that is needed in education. So first, I'm going to start with solutions, not suspensions. The basic idea of this legislation is that schools must use proven alternatives to suspension that correct misbehavior and keep students in the classroom, and invest in training for educators and school personnel, and also ensure that full foundation aid funding is in place to support all students. And I was a teacher for almost 10 years in the DOE, and I taught at two different schools, both of which were progressive schools that really understood that restorative justice is the best way to support students, especially students who are struggling with their behavior. And even in these schools where that was something that was understood by educators and by administrators, it was really hard to do that because we didn't have resources or systems in place. And so it's really important for those things to be legislated, both because there are schools where that might not be a given, and also because even at the schools that are supportive, they need these resources, they need the laws to be in their favor, so that the infrastructure is there. So what solutions, not suspensions, would do is change school codes of conduct to include restorative approaches to discipline, to proactively foster a school community based on cooperation, communication, trust, and respect. The legislation would also shorten the maximum length of a suspension to 180 days unless required by federal law, and it would limit suspensions for children ages pre-K through third grade to only the most serious behavior. So there we're talking about roughly 8 years old and under. Those kids are little, right? They might be making big mistakes, and they're still mistakes. Those kids are really still learning, and they're still soaking in all the messages that we're sending them by how we respond to their behavior. And so we want to send them the message that when they mess up, we can help them make it right. We can help them learn to make a better choice next time. Not that when they mess up, they're, kicked out of the community for half a year or up to a whole year. It's quite significant. And then the legislation would also require that students who are suspended receive academic instruction and the opportunity to earn credit, complete assignments, and take exams. Again, what message are we sending our kids if they make a mistake, they make a bad choice, and the result of that by their school is to take away instruction, right? We're saying that if somebody messes up, they don't deserve to learn. That is not how that's not the message that we want educators to be sending, and it's also not really in line with the Constitution. And this legislation would also require charter schools to follow state education laws on student behavior and school discipline. And I did work for 2 years at a charter school, and I can tell you they are not doing that. I apologize because I might be saying some things that people already know from lived experience, but Solutions Not Suspensions promotes proven methods that hold students accountable and help them learn from their mistakes while keeping them in the classroom. So these methods are proven to be more effective in actually helping students change their behavior and be more pro-social compared with punitive methods like detentions and suspensions. And statewide, Black and Latinx students make up 42% of all students, yet they account for 71% of all students referred to law enforcement. So we know who is disproportionately impacted, and we know that that is a lasting effect. That is not a one-time thing. That is going to continue to have a domino effect on the rest of their lives. And additionally, students with disabilities were suspended 87% more often than students in the general education population, that's not just a disproportionate impact. That means that something is wrong with the way that we're analyzing and addressing this behavior, because most likely, if you're seeing this huge increase in punishment for students with disabilities, then we know that we're not supporting them, right? We're not supporting them to either access the curriculum or have coping mechanisms. There's something missing in the way we're supposed to be taking care of these kids. And with those two statistics, I want to also keep in mind the group of children for whom both of those would apply, right? Black students with disabilities have both of those negative impacts, being aimed at them. And so this legislation would really go a long way towards making our schools more equitable for those students. And so New York schools must take steps to address these inequities and advance restorative practices to better support student populations. And one thing I want to make clear is that on the city level, this can be a little bit confusing because the DOE actually has a relatively progressive discipline code compared to other districts in the state. New York City's discipline code is very, I don't know what word to use, but it's flexible, I guess you could say. So there's a lot of room for individual decision making at the school level. So it can be very progressive depending on how an administrator uses it. But as a result of that, the Solutions Not Suspensions Act would not dramatically change the results of specific student behavior that were kind of on the menu. However, it would codify those limits, which is really important because, as we know, we're under mayoral control. The chancellor right now or the next chancellor could at any point decide to change the discipline code. And so it's important for this to be written into law so that it can't be at the whim of an individual chancellor. This would also provide funding for restorative justice training. So this goes back to what I said at the beginning about where I was teaching. In a progressive system, so-called progressive system, at a school where restorative justice was known to be what we were aiming for, but the teachers did not have restorative justice training, and our school couldn't afford to pay for it. And so it fills that gap. And then again, the charter schools, that is a huge gap in New York City. They don't follow the progressive DOE discipline code. And I think, yeah, that's my last slide on solutions, not suspensions. I'll move on to childcare and then take questions. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or I can ask when she.
Yeah, yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, you can,
Okay.
you can.
Okay, great. So moving on to childcare. And this is going to be, sorry, this is going to be focused on the state level, but all of it really kind of trickles down to the city level as well. And I'll get to that a little bit more specifically, but I just want everyone to keep in mind going in that anything that the state doesn't cover, the city has to either find that money or we don't have those services. And the state of childcare in New York City right now, as many of us know, is really dire. I have a 2-year-old and we do have her in daycare, and no, we cannot afford it. I don't think anyone who's paying for childcare in this city feels like they can afford it. We're really like at a crisis point where families are leaving. So someone has to step in, right? We are aligned with the Empire State Campaign for Childcare. So a lot of this presentation is going to be based on their platform. These are kind of the basic ideals that we're fighting for. We believe that universal childcare means high quality, free, equitable, and universal childcare that meets the needs of all children and families and pays childcare programs the true cost of care with a thriving wage and benefits. And we have developed a roadmap to universal childcare. Again, this is on the state level. And this would work our way up to in 6 years, universal childcare for kids from 0 to 13 years old. And again, that is meeting these, I can't go back anymore. There we go. Meeting these kind of benchmarks for universal childcare, where it's not just some kids, it's not, the what is it, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. model that doesn't work for most families. It's a real universal system that meets the needs of all children and families and pays the true cost of care. So there are a lot of elements here, and I'm going to go through them one by one. But the basic idea is that each of these pieces can be scaled up year after year to meet this universal childcare goal in 6 years if we start now. So the first piece of it is that universal childcare in New York will not succeed without a growing, well-compensated, and supported workforce. So right now, we have enough licensed childcare providers to serve at most 28% of our state's children. And the true number might be lower due to staffing shortages. And the reason for that, or one reason for that at least, is low wages. Childcare providers generally make poverty wages. They're often forced to rely on government assistance to support their own families. They make less than 96% of other professions in New York State. And that's with families paying exorbitant fees for the childcare. Why is that? Because childcare is just not a money-making scheme, similar to public education, right? It's like, that's why private K through 12 schools are not, they're not affordable. Of course they're not. We know that. Private childcare is not affordable, and it's not a good way to relying on that private model is not going to get families affordable care, and it's also not going to get the educators the wages they need. So the state government must create a permanent state fund to increase childcare worker compensation, and this is the legislation that would create that permanent state fund and begin funding it. And sorry, couldn't see that part. Okay, and then we pair this workforce compensation fund with other efforts to expand capacity and build a pipeline of early childhood educators. And this is really the only way we are going to be able to increase access to childcare. And this is also the piece that is really missing. We know that Mayor Mamdani and Hochul have been really excited about investing in childcare this year. We are glad to see that. There is zero investment in the workforce specifically. And I want to be really clear about that because it is alarming. The state, the city, there has not been additional investment in the workforce this year. And no one has really addressed how that will even work. Aside from the fact that this is the right thing, aside from the fact that childcare workers are majority women of color and immigrant women, aside from those pieces, just the practical part of, so how are we going to increase access to childcare without paying these people enough that they're going to stay in their jobs? No one has addressed that. So that's a real problem. The next piece of this plan is about the Child Care Assistance Program. I'm going to call it CCAP. You'll also hear it referred to as vouchers. Those are all the same thing. This is the main way that the state supports or subsidizes childcare in New York State. It applies to children 0 through 13. So after school age, that means after school, and it means summer care. So for like an 11-year-old, right? That's what assistance would pay for those other ages. And CCAP covers families from low and moderate incomes to have access to childcare while their parents work or pursue an education. You have to fill out, there is a barrier to access. You have to fill out forms proving that you work the hours you work or go to school during the hours that your kid would need care. And as of December of 2025, 29 counties have closed enrollment. That number is outdated. I believe it's now 17,000 children are on the wait list in New York City alone. It keeps going up because the wait list is closed. So every time a new family qualifies, that number just goes up. So we need more funding to clear the wait list. These are families who have already demonstrated they have a significant need. And, we made them fill out the paperwork and jump through the hoops and say, yeah, I promise, I really need this. And then we're saying that they're out of luck because we don't have the funding. So we need to fund this program and clear the wait list before we then move on to expanding access to other groups. And we should shift the management of the program to New York State and fully eliminate parent co-payments. And again, this is a 6-year roadmap, so those things could happen later on, but what we need to do right away is clear the wait list. Sorry. This graph shows monthly enrollment in CCAP. And you can see New York City in the like reddish orange there going way up. Yeah, I think I've covered this, but CCAP is super important. And so then the other two pieces on that roadmap are bridge projects. So these would be models of universal childcare that we would start in specific communities around the state and the city, and then expand them more and more every year until we achieve free universal childcare. So there's two types. One is community eligibility projects, and the other is capped fee projects. So for community eligibility, you would have like a little bubble of a community where all families with children in that community get childcare. And you would identify the community because a significant number of low-income families already reside there. Why? Because they're already eligible for CCAP. And so they already fall under this umbrella of the state should be paying for their care anyway under CCAP. And so it's a little bit of an extra stretch, but not much for the state to then kind of fence off that community, not literally, but, draw a line around that community and say, everyone in that community gets free universal childcare. And then again, year after year, we can make more of those communities larger and larger to scale up. And then the other type of bridge project is a capped fee project. And so all families in a community would access childcare through a participating provider at a cost of $100 a week, $20 a day. There's no test on that, income test, work test, or anything like that. And again, if you are paying for childcare right now, or you know anyone else who is, $100 a week is not nothing, but it's much better than what we are paying. And this is a little bit more about the community eligibility bridge project, which I'm just going to leave up for a second. I won't get too deep into this. But the South Bronx is an example of a neighborhood that would be eligible under that project. And this, and this is this is a reform to CCAP that would cap out of pocket costs. So again, just scaling up every year so that we increase access, and then after 6 years, we would have universal childcare, true universal childcare from 0 to 13, full year, full day, in a way that works for all families and pays childcare educators a thriving wage. And so I will just invite any questions, but I just want to highlight again that was all focused at the state level. We know that the state budget season is coming to a close. We are pushing really hard for the state to include additional money for the childcare workforce. But we don't know if that's going to happen. And if it doesn't, then again, the city needs to figure something out, because it really doesn't make sense how we can increase access without that piece. So I will take questions on either solutions, not suspensions, or childcare. Go ahead.
That's it. Okay, Erwin here. Thank you for your presentation. Wonderful information. I'll go first with I think it's called solutions, not suspensions. That's what.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what are the alternatives? I know so you mentioned like building like a framework. So what are I guess without knowing what the alternatives are, you can't really have a framework. So I was just curious as to what the alternatives are to the suspensions. And I know
Yeah.
it's a proven method, so I'm assuming they exist.
Yes, thank you for asking. Yeah, restorative justice models, I mean, they vary, but overall, what they often entail is practitioners who have been trained deeply in this work, who can work directly with both the student who has, offended whatever mistake the kid made, that student, and then also whatever victims were involved, depending on, obviously that can look a lot of different ways depending on what the specific behavior is, whether it's like a whole class or whether it's an individual kid who was harmed in whatever happened. So working with both the people who were harmful and the people who were harmed to find together a solution to that harm. And the basic idea, and this is how we actually explained it to kids when I was teaching elementary school, is if you're playing with blocks, you're a kindergartner, you're playing with blocks, and somebody comes and kicks your tower of blocks down, you don't want them to just get a timeout. That doesn't help you, right? And it's not enough if they say sorry and they go get a timeout. That doesn't resolve the problem. It doesn't necessarily teach them that wasn't the right choice. It's better if they have a conversation and see how much they hurt that kid who was building that tower and really investing time in it. And maybe they can work together to build that tower back up. So that's just kind of like a simplified example of like working together to solve the problem, to actually resolve. And sometimes also there's a different problem that's at the root of the behavior, right? So maybe when that kid kicked that tower down, it wasn't about the blocks at all. It was about like the fight that those two kids had the day before that the teacher doesn't even know about. And if you don't go there, if you don't start to have that conversation, you're never going to figure out the root problems. It could have been a fight the day before. It could also be that that kid actually can't access any of the curriculum going around in the room. They don't have the supports needed. They need more support. And again, you won't find that out if you just tell them, go sit in a corner, you have time out, right? And so it's those ideas, but obviously like on a bigger scale and adapted depending on the age of the kids. Yeah.
Also, these are like ongoing long-term conversations, because
Yeah.
one conversation, it might not get the point across to the individual who harmed, for lack of a better term. The
Absolutely.
other individual. It's something that might take a while. So is that something that's being taken into consideration? Because you might have, like, let's say, again, lack of a better term, 10 offenders who are not getting the message the first, second, or third time.
Yeah.
Do the funds consider how far this could go and like how much money that might take?
Yeah, I mean, so the funding that's included in Solutions Not Suspensions is mostly for training. So this would train educators. So like I said, did not get training on this as a teacher. I got training on this outside of my job as a teacher, thankfully. But so just having teachers who fundamentally understand some of those things at its base, like that isn't ongoing funding necessarily. It's ongoing because we have new teachers every year, but like if I am a teacher who then understands all of those things, I will be able to use that every day the rest of my teaching career,
No,
right?
I misunderstood that, but thank you.
Yeah. I would argue that on the city level, we need additional investments because we really need restorative justice coordinators in every school so that there's a dedicated staff person who can do that work long term, like you said.
Okay, now shifting to the universal childcare, the term high quality was in there, high quality universal childcare. Is that like a changing or moving term, or is it like a fixed one? Because that might change depending on the times, like either economic pressures might change that, or like our understanding of what high quality is for, maybe what high quality universal childcare would have been 100 years ago is completely different considering all the advancements we've made. So I'm assuming that's a moving term. Maybe short term fixed, but long, like, just
Yeah, that's a great question. I really appreciate that question. I have to be honest, I don't know. I don't know like what goes into that exact term. I could look at the Empire State Campaign's platform and see if they define it further. They might. But I think the other thing is that we actually have a lot of regulations in place that govern childcare, like a lot. Like that's one of the reasons that childcare providers end up leaving the field is because of the pairing of that low pay with the huge amount of requirements that we place on them in terms of like paperwork and keeping up with certification regulations and everything. So that's the only thing I would say is that there are already a lot of laws and policies in place to make sure that childcare providers meet certain standards, like, you know, safety standards, things like that. But in terms of kind of a meatier definition of high quality, that's a great question. I'll look into
Then
that.
my last one, I promise.
Yeah.
What is the number for significant amount of low-income families in a community so that you clear that threshold so that the entire community gets childcare? The reason I ask is because what worries me is significant could be 20, could be 51% or 50.1%, whatever it is. But if it becomes like a fixed number that is not that high, I can see certain communities, you know, pushing to get some low income individuals in their community so that they clear that number and then they all get it and they don't really need it. So how would you combat, or how would that be combated? I don't know if you would be the
So two things. One thing I want to say that's
Yeah.
really important is that framing of like giving the child's care to people who don't really need it. That was something that I brought up too when my organization started talking about this. And what people pointed out who have been doing this work for many years, rightfully pointed out that that's actually not the way we should be looking at it. Who needs access to childcare? Everyone. Yes, we want to prioritize the people who need it most urgently. And also, if everyone gets access to childcare and that means the rich people do too, that's a good thing. It's good for our society for everyone to have access.
I do agree with that. Everyone should. It depends, right? If it's not going to happen all at the same time,
yes,
then we do need to prioritize. And
absolutely,
it does in different ways. Now, if it were to happen all at the same time, I agree with you 100%. But realistically, it's not going to happen at the same time. So there's these little tricks that can be played, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So 80% is the actual threshold for where we start with in terms of community eligibility. And I think you saw it listed out some of those neighborhoods that would fall into that category right now: Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, and the South Bronx, and then a number of rural communities as well, that already have 80% of their community would qualify for childcare assistance today. And again, we scale up every year. So if we start with 80%, then the next year, maybe it's 70%, you know, and so more and more communities are eligible.
Thank you.
Sure. Thanks.
Does anyone else have questions? Go ahead, Al.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for your incredible enlightenment about the restorative justice. And in places where this approach has been used, they've shown not only, you know, major gains in mental and emotional health for the students, but some districts, like in Phoenix, Arizona, when they pulled law enforcement officers out of the high schools and replaced them with restorative justice programs and student councils, they actually found that the incidences and the crime rates in schools declined. They did not explode like originally predicted by some of the rah, you have to arrest somebody, communities. So enough with the stump speech. My question is, you mentioned that when you were trained as a teacher, you did not get training in restorative justice. You had to get that training, you know, afterwards, in people that do restorative justice. But could training for restorative justice be enforced through state legislation or chancellor registrations to make it a requirement that everybody that gets a license to teach must show proficiency in administering restorative justice?
Yeah, I don't think chancellor's regulations, as far as I know, could do that. I think teaching certifications are state level guidelines. So I think that the state education department theoretically could do that, I believe. I'm not an expert on like state law, so I could be wrong about that, but that would be my guess. I think that is though a complicated process in terms of like I think there's like if you mandate that all teachers need that training to be certified, you need to first make sure that like all the training programs are able to provide that training, right? You can't mandate that everyone needs the training and not set something up to make sure that everyone has access to the training. So that would be great. And what I would say is that if we pass solutions, not suspensions, that is a step in that direction. That could pressure teaching programs to, teacher ed programs to start providing that training because they want to make sure their teachers are prepared to teach in this system that is going to implement restorative justice, right? And so every step we take in that direction is a positive step, I would say, regardless of kind of which part of the system you're pushing on.
So my plan B part of the question is, as the work being done with the colleges and universities that provide the teacher training, to kind of adopt that as a best practice in their training, because it's good for the child and it's also good for, the system.
Yeah, that's not work that AQE does specifically. I know there are other organizations that are likely doing that work. But yeah, like I said, hopefully all of that work is all pushing in the same direction and all bringing us closer to the same goal.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
We have a question online, and then I'll go next if no one else has any question. From Orlando Nunez. Is it possible to assign a mentor or youth life coach during the time of suspension and after?
Yeah, I love that idea. That's not part of the legislation. I see Jenna has her hand up. Did you want to jump in?
Go ahead, Joanna.
Do you mind, Kaiser?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So I'm just like, I got super stoked when I saw Kaiser present on this bill because it's Senator Jackson's bill and it's our priority in terms of education as soon as the budget passes. And so this is a response a little bit to Al Curlin's question and Orlando. Where restorative practices is not just a teacher, but it's really a school culture. So social worker, everyone that's kind of engaging with that child will be brought into what it means to really support that child. So that it just becomes a culture change of a supportive environment where it's preventive and it's responsive in real time versus reactive and really looking at the root causes, and supporting the families and the child. And so because the bill is written in a way so that suspensions is the absolute last thing. So Orlando, that question about can a mentor, yeah, the school would have that flexibility that the bill tries not to be overly prescriptive, but prescriptive enough so that teachers feel supported. So that school has kind of program, and that is a choice that the school can implement to address. That will be part of restorative practices. And in regards to restorative practices in general, as Kaiser said, we're ahead of the game when it comes to New York City schools. But again, it's not standardized enough. So some schools do it much better than others. But there are parts of the state that are not as blue or progressive, if you will, as New York City. So some superintendents, which is the same as chancellor in New York City, some superintendents in other school districts outside of New York City, they hear the word restorative practices and they run. Like they're like, wait, you're talking about what language? Because it's a much more conservative. So we just talk about, we want training on practices that are holistic and compassionate and supportive. So I just wanted to give that context. Thank you, Kaiser, for letting me chime in.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad to have you here. We have an expert in the room. So yeah, lucky to have you chime in.
So I have a few questions.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start with solutions, not suspensions. I think you had said that it's sort of practice in New York City already, and it's sort of like the bill is sort of in practice in New York City. Was that correct?
No, the bill isn't in practice in New York City. What's happening in New York City is that the discipline code, which is like a big document that tells administrators and teachers how to respond to different student behaviors, that code is relatively progressive. So this is a made up example. This is not really in the code, but let's say, you know, a kid pulls the fire alarm as like a prank, right? You would go into the code, you would find whatever category you think that fits into, and then it's going to provide you some options for what your responses are. Again, made up. I don't know exactly what category that would be under, but it might say you could have a restorative conversation with that student. You could call the student's parents in to have a conversation together. So those are some like more progressive responses. And then it would also give some other options, like you could give the kid detention. Again, an example I made up, but like it will give you some options, and some of them are more based in restorative practices, and some of them are more punitive. So that's what Joanna was saying, where like there's a lot of wiggle room. And so solutions, not suspensions, would put some limits on the punitive side of that. You would not be able to, let's say, suspend that child if they were in kindergarten for pulling the fire alarm, right? I don't know, according to the discipline code right now, whether you could do that, because the discipline code is fairly progressive, but you wouldn't be able to under solutions, not suspensions. And then that would codify that into law. And so if the next chancellor chooses to change the discipline code, you still wouldn't be able to suspend a kindergartner for doing that. And then that's just the discipline code itself. Then there are other pieces like the teacher training that are not part of the New York City school system right now, that we don't expect to be, and that we really need solutions, not suspensions, to pass in order to get that money for training.
So another question is, why not also just require part of the education for teachers, people who are getting their degrees to become teachers? Why not throw that into the curriculum there as well?
Into the legislation?
Not into, I mean, it could be legislation, however, you know, like why not advocate for that what you're trying to get into this legislation as restorative justice?
Yeah, so I believe that I don't think that this bill could cover that. And again, I'm not an expert on like education law, but I believe that that would have to be a separate campaign, because how teachers are certified is just, I believe, like a separate part of state policy, and unions would also push back. Yes, it would have to be through the state education department. Thank you, Joanna. And also to the point that she made earlier, not that we would be against that. I do think that's a good idea if you could get it through the state education department and through the pushback. But it really is important for this to be coming system-wide from the top down, rather than like if I as a teacher am trained in restorative practices, but I go into a school where the principal is vehemently against restorative practices, there's not that much I can do, right? And so teacher training is a good thing. It should be in certification requirements, but that alone isn't enough.
And I guess I wanted to understand an example where the problem is maybe the parent disagreeing with the teacher or whatever happened. Like what happens in that situation if the parent's just not
Yeah.
hearing?
Yeah, I think that's a great example, because that's actually, I would say, an example where punitive practices really don't work, because you can't give a parent detention, right? Nor should you be able to. And so a lot of the time when we're used to punitive practices and there's a conflict between a parent and a teacher, schools just don't even know what to do. They kind of throw up their hands because they don't have the tools. Whereas restorative justice absolutely can handle that conflict, right? Restorative justice is all about bringing the parties together, and there are like specific protocols that you go to in order to get to the root of the problem and find a resolution that works for everyone. And so it would be the same thing. You would need to bring the parent in and have that conversation together, have a circle together. And that actually could help to resolve the issue, whereas, punitive measures just don't even do anything there.
And just on the discipline code, do you understand how that gets updated? Does it often get updated? Is it old, archaic?
It got updated somewhat recently. I'm talking like last 10 years, I think, to this progressive version, but I don't know how I don't know if it's a regular thing or if it's just something that happens when they decide to do it. I'm not sure. Question.
Okay. And so then last question, well, two things. Who's opposed to this legislation? Just administration, teachers, what?
Joanna, do you want to take that one?
So teachers, the teachers union are not opposed to it. They're just a little concerned about being tasked to do something and not having the support of the principal or others. So it's kind of like they feel they've already evaluated, or the class size is already large, or how do they teach a student if another student is distracted. So they're a little bit like, okay, don't tell us exactly like to the T what to do, but don't leave it so wide open that it's easy for us to be told we did it wrong or that we failed. So those conversations are going with the union. There's conversations also about, for example, excessive tardiness. As Kaiser said, like, is it the fault of the child? I mean, we don't know if this child is late because they have to take their younger siblings to school. We don't know if they're in a foster care situation. Or if there's something at home, and even absences. And the bill also caps the number of days that, the students um, are suspended. When we had a hearing, I think it was 2 years ago, the biggest naysayers were the associations representing supervisors outside of New York City. CSA, which is the union representing principals, does not love it. But they're trying not to be so totally outwardly against it. But definitely the associations representing supervisors outside of the city are very against it, because they feel that it'll tie their hands, and they have this mentality of, well, if the child is a danger, like they go to extreme examples. Like if the child is like, let's say, hitting the teacher with a bat, or they'll say has a gun, are you saying we can't suspend them? But that's already enshrined in federal law. We don't have to state that. Like, duh, of course, there are things where the child we don't have to say suspend, but has to be removed for the safety of the child and everyone in his place. But I think you'll note, Jade, that a couple years ago, because there is an SNS coalition, there were conversations about the right kind of language, and the coalition and the legislative sponsors, which is Jackson in the Senate, and Solage in the Assembly. We've come a long way, and there's really great conversations happening with the teachers union of what this looks like. And that's why what Kaiser said earlier, professional development is really important to the teachers union, because they just want teachers to feel secure as to what is expected of them, so that they're not kind of caught out there by their supervisors.
And I guess because the bill hasn't moved for years, and I know that you guys made amendments last year. Is it in your opinion, for both of you, is there like potential for it to actually get done this year? The mayor was supportive of this bill when he was an assembly member. Is there any conversation with like the mayor's people about this?
I don't think we've gotten to the point of talking to the mayor's office. Sorry, Kaiser, I don't know. Is it okay if I answer? Okay. In terms of conversations between the SNS coalition, which AQE is a huge part of, and the sponsors and the teachers union, we've never been this far. we're in a very good place, all three parties, and coming up with something that everyone is comfortable with.
Thank
We
you.
just need the budget to pass.
And now I just have a couple questions on the childcare piece. Give me a second, because I wrote them down. How is the wait list is determined based on people who actually apply?
The CCAP waitlist?
Yeah,
Yes, people who apply, anyone who applies and is approved at this point goes on the wait list because it's capped. They don't have funds to pay for more people.
so the number could be like extremely higher.
It's I believe it's 17,000 just in New York City, and it's going up every day because more families are applying.
And earlier you were showing a chart where there was a curve and increase. What drove that increase in people applying?
This is I'm looking at the chart. Hold on, I'll share it again. So this is the whole chart shows from 2015 through 2025. We don't see specific years at the bottom, but I'm guessing that 2020 is around here. And so
Okay.
or like maybe around here really. So then can you see my mess? Anyway, I think there's like a drop off there and then it goes way up. So I don't know if that answers your question. I feel like there is some, right, like pandemic related
Yeah,
movement in
COVID
that chart.
related, like
Yeah.
doubled from, or not doubled, but like a 40% increase from where it was originally.
Right. And I don't know, there might be other factors that I'm not aware of that also led to that increase. But I think the cost of childcare has also gone up dramatically. So I think between 2015 and 2025, I don't know, I didn't have a kid in 2015, but I know it's wildly expensive now. So I think that might have gone into it as well.
And do you know how much it's funded at now?
CCAP?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head. I can definitely get that number. Yeah, it is not in my brain right
I'm
this
asking
second.
because then, right, you have a 6-year plan to do this, which also requires money. So what does it cost for the first year?
So what's great about the plan is that CCAP funding goes up, but then the other programs kind of fill in the spots, right? So CCAP is means tested, meaning people have to apply, and I said jump through hoops, right? They have to meet work requirements, or education requirements. People who are like gig workers generally don't qualify for CCAP because they can't prove that they're working the hours that, even though they can't actually take care of that child all the time, they can't prove on paper that they're working those times. So all that to say, there are a lot of people who would gain access to care over time, and then there are all these other people who do qualify for CCAP who would fall into the other programs. So like the community eligibility program, right? Where the Bridge Project, where the South Bronx, 80% of people qualify for CCAP. So we make that area an area where there is universal childcare. So that eliminates like that. You don't have to pay for those families both times, right? That eliminates the need to fund CCAP for those families. And then, like I said, every year those bridge projects expand and expand. So by the end of the 6 years, ideally, families wouldn't have to apply for CCAP. Now, CCAP funding actually comes from the federal government in part. And so we would keep that funding, right? We want the federal government to continue paying for those families. We would keep that funding, but instead of those families having to jump through those hoops, fill out that paperwork, prove, yes, I need childcare, it would go to everyone. And then we would just, on the back end, we would know that that federal funding is being used for those families who qualify for it. But everyone would be able to access childcare. I know that didn't directly answer your question, but the point being, like, you know what I'm saying? That like, even though it seems like CCAP funding would have to go up every year dramatically, it actually wouldn't, because in the end, it would kind of be covered by other programs.
How much does a worker get paid?
How much do the workers get paid now?
Yeah.
So there's not a clear answer to that because all the programs are different. If you're talking about yeah, like all the private programs are different. They pay their workers differently. But what I can say is that the formula that determines the payouts for CCAP are not based on how much it costs to take care of a kid. They are based on they're based on another formula that just isn't about how much it actually costs to take care of a kid. So part of the adjustments that we need for CCAP are switching to the cost of care model, where we're actually determining how much it costs to take care of a kid. Then we pay the programs that, and so that they can actually pay their workers. But right now, it's just kind of a per
Who
kid rate.
determines that formula?
The state, I believe.
Even though it's federal funding?
Right. So yeah, it's administered by the state. Yeah.
Earlier, I think you had put in your plan to shift the management to New York State, no?
I think that means to New York State from the localities. So sorry, it's complicated, and I want to acknowledge I'm not like fully an expert on all of this, so I
It's
can
okay.
always go back and ask more questions. But my understanding is that so the money comes in part from the federal government and then in part from the state as well. And then the state gives it to localities. And so then in New York City, for instance, it's actually administered by ACS. That's who gives the vouchers, like makes sure that the families have the vouchers and that the vouchers get get to the childcare programs. That should be shifted to the state. That's what does that answer your question?
Yeah. And I guess my last question is I'll forget the question, and I'll just say, is the federal funding that we get, is it like matched at 50-50, like the state pays 50 and
No.
the feds pay 50, or it's like all federal funding that goes to the state and the state distributes down to the localities?
No, yeah, I don't think they're related. Like the federal government pays what it pays and then the state chooses what it pays. It's not 50-50. It's not a match situation.
Okay, so we just get whatever the feds give us, and then the state can choose whether they want to put
Yeah,
more
so
money.
the amount from the federal level is based on what's mandated. So we are mandated to cover childcare for certain populations. I believe it's people who I'm not going to remember that it's certain people qualify federally. They are mandated to receive free childcare, and the federal government pays for those families. For instance, the federal government does not pay for people who are undocumented. That's like they are not covered by that federal mandate. And so if the state or the city chooses to provide childcare to people who are undocumented, that has to be other money. That can't be from federal money. That's not the only example of how the state pays, but that's one example of why it would take
that
two
noise?
different funding streams.
Okay, but you wouldn't know sort of what the requirements are, like what the states have are, is it just age of child or income based?
No, for which families are mandated to be covered?
By the state, yeah.
It's not just age of child or income based. It's specific. I think it's families who are on Medicaid, and there's I think one other category that I'm forgetting right now. I can get back to you with that. I'll write down the question and get back to you.
I'm done with my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Not my phone. This is something that you might not know, but I really want to put it on the record. Do we know whose idea it was to give organizations or institutions like ACS and foster care agencies the money to distribute child care vouchers?
I don't know the answer to that, but I can tell you that I've wondered it too.
Because most people that I know that go through those systems, like they literally have to have a case, they literally have to be involved in the foster care system some type of way. So just regular schmegular,
You
people-
shouldn't have to have a case in order to get CCAP. That, I mean, if someone was told they had to, that's incorrect. Although it's possible that that because the list is closed. So, okay, sorry. I already said that the federal government has to cover certain people, right? We are mandated to provide free childcare for those people. Joanna said in the chat, I think the other category may be TANF, and I don't remember what that stands for right now.
That's HRA. That's temporary
Oh,
assistance.
yeah, yeah. So families who fall into those categories, we're mandated to provide childcare for them. If a family is applying for CCAP, but they fall into those categories, then they shouldn't be placed on the wait list because we're mandated to provide childcare for them. So I don't know if that message could have gotten lost in translation or something, but there's nothing that says that you would have to have an ACS case in order to get CCAP. That is misinformation.
Well,
But it
I
doesn't
know.
answer your other question. Yeah.
Because I'm asking, because, last year, a while ago, people who was getting their vouchers from ACS got cut off. And their reason for cutting them off was they're saying that they couldn't supply them because they had to supply the people who was directly involved with ACS. I just don't think that it's ever been a good idea to give entities that separate families via foster care, adoption, removing, children from homes through ACS, whose budget is already over $3 billion. All of these foster care agencies are well funded. Why aren't they giving that money to daycares directly or child care providers directly? It doesn't make any sense. And if somebody says, because to hold somebody accountable, I'm going to scream. Because obviously, we have a big problem with both of these entities that, cause so much family trauma, where I don't understand why they are the go-to for daycare vouchers.
Right. Yeah. And like I said, I don't know the answer to who made that decision or why. And I certainly won't be telling you it's going to hold anyone accountable. The only thing I can say is that that's, we do think that management should be shifted to the state. And that would shift it away from ACS.
Okay, well, maybe we should try to figure out. Oh, so are you saying that, are they getting the funding through the federal funds? Because I know that I believe the state also provides funds and discretionary funds to these organizations for well, I knew at least the foster care agencies.
Wait, what's your question? I don't understand the question.
No, I said I need to research because I don't think all of this money that I'm talking about that's going to the foster care agencies is necessarily coming from the state. I mean, from the feds. I know some of that money comes from the state, some of that money comes from discretionary funds, but it never goes to the people. And everybody keeps talking about how it's women of color. I'm not a woman of color, I'm a Black woman. There's a difference. And my elders just came from being colored. So don't ever call me a person of color. It's gonna get ugly. But I know that Black and brown and immigrant communities, I used to be a child care provider myself, and like my salary for infants was $600 and for the month, and just trying to get paid. So I'm just really confused why we use all of these entities instead of giving the money directly to the people who are doing it, and cut all of that red tape, cut all of that bureaucracy, and maybe we wouldn't be having this conversation. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm on the spectrum, but I just see things very clearly and I don't understand. But thank you, Kaiser. Any other questions?
Thank you.
That makes no sense that they give all of this money to the.
It's the way the state chooses to administer.
And that's horrible leadership. And I'm not scared to say so.
Well, it's leadership that's designed to benefit the institutions that are doing it.
And not actually the people. And then when we get into these situations, right? Everybody's asking how we got here. But it's literally the people who make the rules, who make the laws, who distribute the money that put us in this situation. And that just upsets me a lot. You know, we just had our mayor come out with, he's having his 100 days plan, or his 100 days of whatever he's doing. His 100-day plan or whatever. He's doing that on Sunday. He just released the racial equity report. He stood up and he talked about the wealth, and he talked about all of the hindrance that have been done on purpose. So I'm really looking forward to what he's going to do to change it, because I'm not very excited at this point. I'm seeing a lot of the same old same. I'm seeing a lot of the people who have worked in this field 20, 30 years and want to keep the status quo at our, expense. But everybody talks about it. Everybody says the problems that we all live with, but no one does anything about it. And the wealth gap keeps increasing. And, you can't afford to send your child to child care, and you can't afford to be a child care provider. Like, we don't care about our kids. It's really given we don't care about our kids and we don't care about our families. So thank you, Kaiser, for the information. I know solutions, not suspension, has been something that we're working on. We're 8, 9 years in trying to get this bill passed.
Yep.
Another choice.
Yes.
But I appreciate Robert Jackson for sponsoring this bill from the start and being one of our superstar parents, and alongside his chief of staff, Johanna Garcia. So thank you, Kaiser.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate all of you for having me, for all the really deep questions. I wrote down a couple that I couldn't answer, and I'll get back to you. And if there were any others that you that are still lingering that I didn't fully answer, feel free to put them in the chat. I'm also going to put my email in the chat, kaiser@aqeny.org, if anyone wants to reach out, get more involved, or get any last questions answered. I'm happy to. But thank you all so much. Really happy to be here.
Could you just send us the presentation?
Yes,
Please.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate you,
Okay.
Kaiser. So next up, we have Jazz Power Initiative. I don't know if they're here. Arlene Rodriguez.
No. That person's not here.
They're not here, so we're moving on. Okay, so committee business. The charter school public hearing. I thought that we should have a conversation as a committee on how we think it went. And what did we think of, some of the comments that we heard. Jamira, start with you. Because you was there with me. Thank you, Jesus.
I was happy about the turnout, right? Let's start off with the positive. We had a good turnout, lots of
Let's do pros and cons.
let's start there. Lots of families, but I think the message may have not been received of what the purpose was for the hearing. For starters, I feel comfortable saying that simply because during setup, I had a family ask me, like, what is happening? What is this about? So if a family from a specific school shows up to an event that's open to all schools, right, whether you're public or charter, that means there must have been a specific communication parents from, Zeta Charter School may have received that doesn't necessarily align with the hearing. The hearing was geared towards all charter schools and just both public and charter. However, I think there must have been a little message there that us as a board may not be aware of, but the parents of Zeta may have received something different. Simply because there was a strong focus based on what the families were sharing. They thought that we were trying to take something away from them. That's kind of what I was receiving.
Their funding, which we can't. We literally can't.
So I was confused there. I was like, I don't really think they understood what it was about. But nonetheless, you know, they came out, they showed support for their school. And
Singular.
yeah, it was a lot of that present there regarding.
I mean, it was good for our first hearing.
Yeah.
I probably should have gave this to you before you gave your thoughts, but you was spot on. Jay, comments, cons and pros?
I missed the hearing. I was actually still working
So
in
sorry.
Albany, sorry.
I know you wasn't there. Your name was there though.
Um, but thank you for sharing. I mean, the email that
I'm gonna
Initial sharing
I'm gonna
is-
wrap it up.
says it was the executive director of that one school that came the last time we were here, sent a mass email to her membership saying the community is looking to like defund us or take our money.
The community board,
Yeah.
and we were specifically having a meeting. Yeah. You done, Jay?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah, I sent you the email.
no, that's all right.
Okay.
But what I will say is, it was good to see parents, good turnout, right? It was a good amount of parents. Obviously, room was full. Different reasons to why the room was full, but just hearing the parents talk about why they like the school. I was glad to see when Tanisha stepped up and kind of changed the, how would I say, temperature of the room, because it seemed like it was about charter school versus public school, right? And that wasn't the point of the meeting. We did have a couple of our public school parents there. It was good to see the principal from IS 528 there representing for, the public schools and whatnot. But again, that wasn't the point of the meeting. I guess we'll find out more about it. But for me, I guess what I got from it, from the standpoint, was more so how can we advocate for having that building on 181st, right? I think that's what that was about mostly. And of course, as us human beings, right, we're gonna go for what we want and whatnot and advocate for that. But that wasn't for that. I think there's also a different sector of the community board, which is like land use and things of that matter when it comes to that standpoint. Obviously, it's prevalent to Youth and Education Committee because it is a school. But since I've joined the board, I'm coming up on a year, and then doing the Youth and Education Committee, it was something that, as I saw the Zetas coming past, I think they came last month, right? It made me start thinking about it, right? There's no mystery. I work directly with schools, and when you see a lot of these new buildings coming up, and you think about schools that have been around serving the community forever, we're talking about hundreds of years almost, right? And you can't even get an air conditioner in the gym, right? And things of that magnitude. It's interesting to see how, there's buildings that were once parking lots just become these brand new multi-million-dollar buildings. And some of them don't even have gyms or even have like outdoor space or things besides to help kids be enriched besides the education, right? We understand education is important, but everybody learns differently at that. But that's what I took away from it. But again, like it was good to see parents show up. I would love to see more public school parents there, and maybe we're always going to look into self as a community board, and maybe we can reach out more to parent coordinators and different people in the school buildings to see if that when we have a next one, that we have the room filled with all types of parties, so we can really address why
We're definitely gonna follow up with the public school here.
I wanted to add, really quickly on that topic,
I'm sorry, you over there rocking it.
add a location. I think we could use a bigger space too, 'cause I think that was like a little hardship, like a bigger space.
Of the auditorium.
Yeah.
Well, one of the reasons was the parents got the wrong information and was told to show up super early so that one school could pack.
Yeah.
And that to me is devious. And I'm hard pressed to say that I want anyone in charge or anyone building new schools in our community that would deceive our parents and our students. Full stop. But we're gonna go to Catherine. Kathy's on the
Yeah, you said my words, and I was like, let me I just got home, guys. Sorry. May, June, I'm there. But I was like, and we're open meeting law, please recorded my face and everything. Yeah, I that's disgusting to me. And I think that one thing that from what I heard from the hearing, and I think even like at the, what month are we in? April? Yeah. So March, when we was there in person and Zeta was there in person, you were very clear in terms of the tone of the hearing, the purpose of the hearing, and that we, I think, as a committee and as a board aren't necessarily like F charter schools, F this. Like we don't necessarily get into a lot of the divisiveness of the discourse, but we're really focused on like we want to talk about parents' experiences, and we know there's negative, positive, whatever types of experiences, but we're here to talk about those. And knowing that there aren't spaces for charter schools, for families in charter schools to necessarily have that, that's what we're here for because we represent the district. So I was really disgusted to know the tone and what happened at the hearing. I think it's incredibly manipulative. And, for me, last month, we ended the meeting in a really like open and collaborative note. And to know that that took place really makes me taken aback. And like, we can have all the presentations between now and December about any school, but and I'm going to say that like any school that has that type of behavior, that's the type of engagement and partnership that you have. What is it? So I'm not here for that. And I think it was a big turnoff personally, and makes true collaboration and communication and compromise or whatever like very difficult. So I really hope that we as a board, I think we as a board, you, Tanisha, who pushed this, was there, Jumina and the team, who really put a lot of care and thought into how this went, we deserve responses for that because it was devious and unfair, incredibly unfair to the work that the office also put together. So, I think we deserve that at the very bare minimum. And we see what happens, but I think there's broken trust there.
Thank you, Kathy. Stefan, I'm gonna send you something, so I'm gonna let you go last because I want you to
Sure.
review it
Sure.
before you make your comments.
I probably
Um,
already got the gist of it just from the
No, but
reactions,
you
but
need to prove.
please, thank you.
Al, Hans and Pros, what did you think? Al, have we ever had a charter school here? You come to all of the meetings. Have we ever had a charter school hearing before, or spent this much time talking about charter schools on the community board
Okay.
since you've been around, Al?
Yes, we've had charter schools come and present.
No,
Specifically
charter
charter-
school hearing, like what
No,
we did.
we've never had a charter school hearing.
Oh, well, we're here now.
That is the pro, to be celebrated, is that we had a charter school hearing.
Exactly.
Because that, again, that has never happened before. And it was an invitation,
Emily.
not only for community board members, but for the entire spectrum of the community to come have a reasonable conversation about the issues of charter schools and public schools. Now, the word devious has been used, and me being, I use astrology, I'm a Libra rising. I chronically avoid conflict, but this is definitely a devious attempt. That even a Libra rising has to come to the realization that's what it was. I do not think it was an accident that only that charter school showed up. It was a strategy. The charter school movement knows full well exactly what they're doing, how to respond. And they felt that by profiling this one school with testimony and a profile of being so high performing and so understanding and so willing to work with everybody, that took the focus off what the actual performance of all the charter schools in the communities. And there was one woman that came, I think it was from the St. Rosalima campus, that talked about all the problems in that charter school.
Mm-hmm.
She was the only one that got to speak, and it was very short,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody else. So I think in a sense that even though that they played their grand strategy, to their purposes, it was also an educational process for us, to become more aware, more strategic, doing more preventative outreach with more representatives from the communities for, as Tanisha said, there are going to be future hearings. That was not the end of all of hearings. That was opening the door to the question. And I think that's what we're moving forward. That's very good.
Thank you, Al. Did I show you this? You also spot on. Erwin?
I think it's the beginning of a conversation in our community that should be had. We should use the coming conversations, as ways, for the community to become informed about charter and public schools, in general. And I think we should continue having them, both for charter schools, both for public schools, and just use them generally as informationals, and understanding of what the community board and community board's relationship is to both, and how they can affect positively and negatively the community as a whole. So that's my thoughts on that.
Thank you. Stefan?
Still processing what I've seen. I think it's really unfortunate.
Look, I've been holding on to this. Ain't y'all proud of me?
Yes.
Cause y'all know I'm spicy. I'm the yeah.
Incredible
Big trouble.
restraint.
It's a shame, I think, is what it is. And I recently submitted the minutes for the hearing, and I was going through the notes again, and I was reading through the comments, and a lot of it was quite repetitive because, frankly, parents were misinformed. And I won't go as far to say they were disinformed, which means it's intentional, but it does seem like there might have been some of that. And it's a shame, especially because there were people with real concerns there, with real questions about the impact of charter schools in our community. And I don't feel like there was a substantive enough conversation about that, because it was overshadowed by many of these repeated comments that were rooted in something that isn't true. I also think it's a little interesting, I'll say, that a school that is concerned about their funding is providing transportation for parents to go to a hearing.
It's not.
Just saying. I think that's interesting. But ultimately, I think what it means is that, as everyone's been saying, this is just the start, and we need to have more conversations. And I think something we can do is try to be as clear as possible in our messaging about what it is that these hearings are about, so that people don't come thinking that it's about something else.
Absolutely.
But those are my 2 cents.
Mr. Ritchie.
I mean,
You got something to say?
I mean, I'm expecting us to at least ask for a meeting with the board of directors for the charter school who are in charge of this person.
Oh yeah. But I just wanted to discuss it with y'all and put it on public record, because I'm sure that someone is going to view this. And I think Kathy, you got your hand up? You have something else to add?
Yeah, but it's really more about, based on what Stefan said about just like kind of future stuff. So you can keep going.
Okay. But Kathy, you saw the thing, right? Okay, great.
Yeah, I guess.
So I'm gonna say right now that it's really a shame, because people don't think that the people on the community board is really connected to the community. And I feel like people are so smart, they're stupid. And they're so concerned about rigor that they're not paying attention to who knows who and doing their research. I want to say that same night, I couldn't understand, like, me and my board members, our committee, we kept looking at each other like, why do they keep talking about funding? Why do they keep saying? And I also don't like this particular charter school, Zeta, have parents talking down on public schools. There was a lot of that at the meeting. And it should never be either or. It should be and. Okay, we want our kids who are in a charter school to get a good education, and we want our kids who are in a public school to get a good education. The parents were very misinformed because it's the other way around. Charter schools take money out of the public Department of Education budget. We are the only place that pays charter school rent. I have visited many public schools who have their space taken over by charter schools, and the public schools look like they ain't got two nickels to rub together. Meanwhile, the charter schools inside the public school space have, have classrooms for building blocks, which is amazing. But if we're not putting the same efforts into our public schools, then we are jeopardizing our public schools. Then we are setting our public schools up. And as a mother and a grandmother and a former public school child, and have raised two kids that went to public school and graduated and went to college, I'm not understanding. But I want to say this on record. I need the ED of Zeta to understand that we are connected to our community, and that I don't appreciate her sending an email out to her Zeta school families, intentionally misinforming them and saying that this charter school hearing was about funding that we can't take away. I don't appreciate her taking up all the space because she wants to build this high school on 181st, which is an absolute no for me. And I will do everything in my power to make sure that doesn't happen, because now I understand that she doesn't care about our children. And I literally have the proof. So I'm going to say but I hope that my colleagues will support me. Anybody who can do what she did, and the way she had hammered the floor packed up, you couldn't even get through. Lied to these families, to these parents, and told them that the hearing was going to start at 6 o'clock. Parents was there at 5:45 for no reason. For no reason. And I just can't say that someone who would do that, who would use deceit and give parents talking points, and also overwhelm our district leader and follow her around. We had to tell this lady to sit down how many times, Shamira? Too many times to count. Someone who moves in that way, in my experience, is not here for our children. I just think that it's, and the more and more they do, the more and more we're seeing who they are. And now I'm understanding that, Zeta is like a spinoff of Success Academy. Ask their ED where she started.
Also,
I do my research, and Tanisha Grant and, the Youth and Education Committee, and as chair, things are different now. And I need people to understand that you now have someone who sits in this seat that understands what's going on in the education world, charter and public school, and gives a whole bunch of my personal time, like Al, to do this work. So I don't appreciate, I feel like we was gaslit.
what I add to what you say is that there's a history of misrepresentation that's been developed by extreme right-wing forces in this country, like the Project 2025.
Mm-hmm.
And what they do is electoral fraud. There's widespread fraud in the elections. It's like 0.0000001% of election fraud. But they keep hammering people, who have predispositions to suspicion, to adopt that as reality. And that's what the Zeta people did. They know that their parents are afraid of losing the one opportunity they think they have. It's not the one opportunity, but they've been programmed believe it is. It's a right-wing, exploitative, manipulative strategy purely for private profit of one institution. And what you have written down there, Tanisha,
No,
is
and I think
it's
it's slander, right? It's slander because she is telling her school community, oh, well, you know, even though the community board admits that charter schools do better than public schools, have any of y'all ever said that? Anybody
Strong words.
admitted to her that we think charter schools do better than public schools? So it's lies, and I don't appreciate it. Okay. We will continue to have discussions about this. Some of the parents were very peeved when they found out, like, and that's the thing. If you're not even educating your families to understand that this is private, billionaire, right-wing money that you are getting to operate this school, not public funds, if you are turning these parents and these students against parents and students that choose to go to school in public schools, what are we talking about here? What are we talking about here? Like, and I also didn't appreciate how she had children come off of us snacks. It was nasty, nasty, nasty work. And I find it disgusting. Any other comments? Do we have any comments in the audience? Go ahead, sir.
So I'm actually happy that I watched like on YouTube Live. The thing in question we're talking about, you know, that what is this, like a meeting you call it? Hearing. And it was very interesting to say the least. Like a lot of things were happening. But as a member of the community who has an experience of about 10 years, a little bit 11 now in education, I've worked for both public schools and charter schools, and I've had positive and negative experiences in both. So I think I've seen, you know, the best and the worst of both. I can tell you from my experience talking to members of the community, I feel like, especially within the Latino community, I feel like people have this perception that charter schools are automatically better than public schools, maybe because they're new. Effect. So I'm not necessarily here to like pick a side. I just want to say that as a member of the community who's been to just a handful of these like meetings, you know, thanks to Deep, I'm happy. I'm very pro discourse, right? By having these uncomfortable conversations, we get to move the needle forward. So I'm happy, one, to see accountability, to see that I feel like people showed their hand, right? It says more about how you argue than your argument itself, you know, sometimes. And so I personally, in my experience working in, you know, education, I've had people try to throw dirt on my name, you know, stand on my name. And I've had to learn in my personal experience that you got to pick and choose like when and how to defend yourself. Because again, like just your attempt to try and discredit me says more about you than it says about me. And, you know, like I said, I believe in the work that I've done personally in my community, and I feel like my work speaks for itself. So it's kind of hard for you to sway people's opinion on my work. And that's just my personal experience that I'll speak about. But I think it relates to this just because it's like we make this mistake so many times in our country of thinking that it's like us versus them and this they mentality. You seriously away from it. You know, it's so detrimental. And education is something that I'm incredibly passionate about. You know, again, having grown up in this neighborhood, that's not super easy to grow up in. But you know, education is not a game. You know, the lives of our children are not a game, you know. And our communities are not for sale. And I think it's on us to show that. And me being here is a testament of that. Me trying to just do my part. I had you know, right now is my vacation, you know, schools are on break. I could be at home relaxing, and instead I chose to be here. And for me, I feel proud of this moment, at least, that you can't just do something and get away with it. And I think especially in today's political climate, we need more of that. You know, our communities want to feel like the people that are in these seats making decisions are actually advocating for us. So I just wanted to commend the board for at least that part. And I look forward to seeing, you know, how this plays out.
Oh my, we're glad to have you and we hope that you come back and that makes us very happy. You want to say something, Mama?
I worked with a charter school and they had 4 changes of leadership in a year. And I believe in the process of educating our children, but it hurt that to know that there's so many changes and you had to start over once again. And to get the children to do well on a test, they would hammer it in, do this, do that, do the other, and they gave incentives to the children to do well. And it just kind of it skews the idea of what we're trying to promote in a different setting. And I would hope that the schools that are in this area will be to support and to help instead of using their power, their prestige to get the kids into the school and be so strict with them in order for them to quote unquote learn.
Thank you so much. One of the reasons why we had this charter school hearing is because we get a lot of complaints from families, and families think charter schools are good. And again, 2 of my children, my younger children, went to a charter school for elementary school, Harlem Link. But Harlem Link is a singular charter school that were very good to my children, that were culturally responsive. We have this thing called culturally responsive, sustaining education. It is the state policy. Making sure that our kids test well for things that they are never going to think about again after they take that test is not a good thing. It's not a good thing. Anytime an educator comes to me and they say the word rigor, the hair on the back of my neck starts to stand up. This is not culturally responsive and this is not culturally relevant. And what this does is turn our community against each other. And they are, the puppeteers that are doing things like this by misinforming, straight out lying to the families and the students that they're supposed to serve. And then they bring snacks and think it's okay. It's absolutely horrible. And I feel like we was very, very non-partisan. We was very, very, when the ED and Zeta and all of their people came here for a presentation, we listened to them. We didn't even vote on yes or no. Are we going to support y'all or not? Because we wanted to think about it. We wanted to have our charter school hearing. But now that we have more information, next month when we come back, we will be voting and hopefully we will be writing either our own resolution or a joint resolution with some of our other committees, because for me, it's an absolute no. When you misinform our students and you misinform our families on something so asinine, you can't possibly want the best for our students. You can't.
It's like a fear tactic too. Like telling them, if you don't show up to this, they will do this. Like showing up in numbers like that means you don't care.
And it's selfish. It's selfish about giving other people, other students, other parents. We have like 17 charter schools in our district, y'all.
It's the kids showing up with the uniforms. So these kids haven't got home to rest and they're sitting in this room till 7:30.
That's why the kids ain't have to be quiet, just just the adults.
And that was insane to me, and I think that's alarming. The kids shouldn't be in this room at 7:30.
And they literally could have came it's a hybrid meeting. All of these parents could have literally sat at home and testified online.
They didn't invite any older students. You know, they were very, very young, like you said, they didn't need to be there at 7:30.
No, because none of them testified either.
Yeah, high school student can handle something like that. Other charters in the district
So are we,
have older students.
They
that
definitely didn't know
weren't
what was
there.
going on.
are we gonna do another hearing because of? the
Yeah,
way
but probably
it rolled out?
next school year. Because
And that-
probably next school year, but I feel like they did all of that because they want this high school on 181st, which we all know would be an absolute nightmare.
And which we can't really stop regardless, right? As of right, like she didn't even need to do any of that. It's as of right, private
Yeah, but I
property.
think it's something that they want. Like they can build, but it's something that they want to build or something that they want to change that they would have to get the borough president's approval for.
Okay.
I also found out
Okay.
that Kathy.
Oh, no, I was gonna say it's a part of the lot. It's a small footprint of the lot.
Yeah. I also found out that they tried to do this in Queens. And the elected officials and the community shut them down out there. So they're very scared that it's going to happen here again. So they're pulling out all of the tricks. But the tricks are dishonest. So if you're dishonest about this, and I also don't like that every high schooler has to take a college class. That is mandated. Why isn't it for the kids who want to go to college, they can take the AP classes and then have some type of trainings. They have some type of trade school aspect to it. Because all of our kids don't want to go to college. And a lot of kids go to college and then are in debt for the rest of their lives. And they're working at McDonald's because they can't find a job. So college is not the avenue for all of our kids. And it always makes me question when we have charter schools that say, you got to do this. You got to go to college.
Financial literacy is what we.
Civil literacy, civil service. What we gonna talk about next?
Tanisha. That pro of the hearing, the pro of the hearing is not that they got exposed by somebody else. They exposed themselves.
Absolutely.
They confessed to their game, and they showed everybody in the world that was at that hearing what their game is.
Yes, I just want to tell. Go ahead, Kathy.
I think the parents realized that too.
Yeah.
Kathy?
No, what I was gonna raise is a couple like bigger things of one. I want us, or I'm
This is
curious.
a big thing, Kathy. Wait a minute, what you talking about?
What happened?
This is a big thing.
No, I mean like I'm trying to think
I'm just
outside of
playing
this
with you.
individual. Sorry, my fault. I'm in thought. I'm tired. Been up long day. I'm talking about like for the board moving forward. Sorry. So not about the school specifically or the hearing. So one of like, given the fact that the complaints are, I think it would be helpful. It's not even now, but just even after summer, like thinking about what are other ways outside of hearings or meetings that we can support those families. So like, what are, I know last year we were talking a lot about like kind of like office clinics and office hours and things like that. And because I'm really thinking about like, I don't want those families, right, that showed up, those complaints that keep going, that they got to wait for a meeting. But if there's ways that things can be handled in the office with either like organizations or one-on-one meetings, that we can like move that, and move that and help people in that way. The other thing I actually think is important is because I feel like it's the first time, and I have to think about it, but I think it's the first time that this has happened to the board. Like you hear about this happen to elected sometimes and in other spaces of like, oh, the hearing topic was this, and it gets flooded. And, for either good or bad reason, they don't get their stuff done. But for us, I think it's the first time. And I would say at the executive committee how we can really own our narrative, protect ourselves as a board, protect our guests and families that come for whatever we're trying to accomplish. So making sure that like things that we implement in the process, whether that's the order of people speaking, or we're like, you know what, we have the discretion to do XYZ, like that we do that. Because to your point, I'm like, the people who it was meant for didn't even get to talk. And that's crazy. So just thinking about things like that, and that's helpful, I think, for other committees, because there are gonna be other hearing topics, and we don't want this to ever happen to anybody or allow anybody to do that to us. So that's what I was
Definitely a
thinking about.
learning curve, honey.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Kathy.
I want to add, thank
on,
you to the
Jamila.
translators. They were
Yes, thank you, translators. They was amazing. And they was getting frustrated too. They was like, they couldn't hear because Miss Kim was everywhere in everybody's ear. Like Kiana, our district leader, and this is another thing, she had to leave. Like we was looking for the sign up list, and our district leader had to literally leave the room because she didn't feel safe. So we can't have that. We protect our people, and we're not here for that. We're here for the whole community. And again, we don't have a problem necessarily with charter schools. We have a problem with sometimes how they operate and how they treat our families. And look, they done gave us the proof. Thank you, Jesus. Anyone in the audience have anything to say? Jay, see, we want to make sure. Noemi, you got something to say? As one of our super duper education experts.
Hi, I am just listening in, guys. This was a very informative session. Wow. Thank you, Tanisha, for leading the way and giving the community this information, and for everybody who's present and making sure that we're advocating for our kids. So thank you. Bye.
We in this together, girl. Is anybody in the audience have anything to say? Okay, there's 9 people.
If no one in the
Right.
audience has anything to say, one last thing I'll add on on topic, but a slightly lighter note, is that anyone in the education world knows that they should be citing their sources. So I would encourage anyone who's sending out information about the board to look up what the board has actually said, because all of what we do formally is public. So if you are quoting us, it must be out there. And if it's not out there, then it's not true. And that's where I'll leave that.
Thank you, Stefan. Did I tell you I love them glasses?
Thank you.
Okay. All right, well, we will talk some more about this next month. I don't know. Do you think that we should try to have a public school hearing before this school year is out? Edwin? Yes or no? Public school hearing?
Depending on the time, we can get it,
I mean, certainly the people will come.
clear objective. Yeah,
Because I don't want to just
Detail.
have a charter school hearing and not have a public school.
It was either May or June. This one.
I would do June because everybody's getting out of school and they'll feel freer.
So what would be,
Could we do like early June? Because it's like I feel like the end of the school year is gonna be
what
not
would
acceptable.
be the objective of it?
The same thing the objective was of the charter school hearing. We want to hear how you are doing in your school. We want to hear the good, bad, and the ugly. And I guess we just gonna have to put that on the flyer. Like be real specific about what we're doing. So I will talk to the chair and see if it's possible, or we can do, a public school hearing, I would say like in November. I want to do it after enrollment. Enrollment is settled in October. So maybe, and then we could do another charter school hearing because we really have to keep an eye on these charter schools, and they have went unchecked in our community for too long. And as long as the chair appoints me as youth and education chair and my colleagues support me and support what I do, then this is what we're going to be doing. And I hope that we're setting a precedent for the next incoming chair, incoming committee, you know, to do some of this work. Hopefully. Okay, let's move on. Last thing of the night, old business. Oh, Connect the Munos. Sorry. Real quick. I have been informed that the soil at George Washington educational
Campus.
is contaminated. And that they knew this, that SCA had did a test on it before.
And they made them wait.
I made him
From
wait,
what
didn't tell anybody.
From what I'm understanding is it's a conflict. Like, I'm gonna have to talk more to Miss Rosa, but the campus was built on it used to be a carnival and nobody cleaned nothing before they built on top of it. So now the soil that we advocated for, no, we don't want people to eat fruits and vegetables from contaminated soil.
Nothing can be done.
Who determined that it was
I
contaminated?
think SCA.
Have to find out how they.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Well, what is?
And we still
what does
have them test.
contaminated mean to them?
And from what I understand,
did they-
the
when did they-
superintendent is someone else who should come to our meeting. I mean, he was here last year, but
When did they test the soils of 50 years? I don't know.
I don't know. But from what I understand, the superintendent is saying that it's in the Department of Education. That doesn't necessarily mean George Washington campus. So.
Did they provide like a documentation of that?
No, this is just what I'm getting from the conversations that our district leader is having with the superintendent. So I have not called Miss Rosa yet. But
Start there, just get the documents.
that's where we are.
To find out the report
Yeah.
that determined that it's contaminated.
That's
Who issued that report? When was it issued?
Right.
And why was it not responded to?
Possibly, couldn't we just go take a little bit of soil and have it tested?
Right. But also, I'm no horticulturalist, but like, couldn't we use raised soil beds that don't touch the contaminated soil below? Like, there must be a solution here that still allows the program to continue and do the work that they wanted to do. I don't know.
We're going to continue to work on it, but from what I understand, because SCA did contact us and they said the land has been turned over, but the superintendent is saying that it's turned over to the Department of Education, not necessarily the campus. So, and that is contaminated anyway, and you know, things of that nature. So I just wanted to give y'all an update and keep working on it and hopefully have some more information for y'all next month. It's weird though. Okay, so last thing on our agenda, old business. Our resolution. I don't know who put committee communications on there. Okay, it's the resolution. Hopefully y'all all read it, so we ain't gotta go through it. We thank our committee member, Al, for writing this beautiful, intentional, very detailed reso. Do we think that we're ready for a vote? Because it's 8:53. Do we have any friendly amendment, adjustments, things we would like to see in it that is not?
I have a random, how is this not already there?
But that was my question.
It's not, yeah, like it's.
Can't hear Edwin.
Instruction on the end, on the constitution of the state, that, like,
And
I'm like.
if we did more of this while our children were children, we would have more people who don't say, I don't do politics, not understand that politics will do you.
I
We live by policy.
I looked a little into it and it's not the first time I've been into
Oh, it's
which is,
gonna come.
which is, I don't wanna say it's a red flag, but it's weird. Like, why has it been?
Because they
introduced?
don't want to teach the children. They don't wanna teach the
There's
children.
always money and.
They don't want to teach the children. That
Problems.
would literally affect the voting. That would literally affect the youth coming
No,
out.
what I'm saying is usually like when it doesn't pass previous times, it's because there was some budget issue or there's some negotiation stuff, something's going on.
No, but
Either way.
state and committee, that's the barrier
Yeah.
for bills.
So,
License solutions, not suspension.
so that's where it's at right now again. It's in the same place where it died in the past. I think it's an easy one. It's just like, all right.
Yes,
civics,
yes.
You gotta ask the
Yes.
sponsor who's opposed to it, but normally for things like this, teachers are the ones opposed, the unions.
The unions, yeah. Well, either way.
They want children to be civically engaged.
I think
The
it's
bottom line
more,
is-
I think
You
it,
want to teach them to play the piano.
so I would just say, I think it's more that unless you're trying to extend how long school is, you have to cut something to make room for
So it could
something
be
else.
part of the English curriculum.
Social studies.
That's what I was.
Why?
You used to tell us what.
Politics in the 1800s. And the division of powers at the federal level, when what impacts the lives of children are going on within their very school cultures.
Yeah.
On the streets, with police, and with the city government that is failing to address their needs.
I don't
It's
even
a-
understand why our children have to learn about the French Revolution.
So
cares?
if you were gonna talk about the piano to the child, you would not talk about the history of people that played the piano. What the piano is constructed of. You would sit there and you would train that child to play the piano, where they knew how to use the keys, understand the notes. That's what this bill does. It says,
I'm not disagreeing,
Yeah.
I'm just
Hold on,
telling you
yeah,
why
I'm just.
possibly it's not moving.
Yeah. I'm just,
Jay, no, he work up there with them people.
it's, there's other
Poor
reasons
thing.
for it. But it should.
Organizations like Generation Citizen.
Right, I thought I was.
Why vote New York?
You do.
Generational change initiative and CUNY, they've been using this model for years. And students that were just regular students that didn't know buckets about city government or how to get involved to make change became all-stars in learning this process. Why should it not be available to every student starting in the 5th grade? Why?
Personally, my children know. They know how to advocate. They know how to speak to their elected officials. They know who their city elected officials are, who their state elected officials are, who their congressman is. Teach the children. Like, why? It's a reason why we don't want to teach the children. But so I'm not hearing any friendly amendments. I'm just hearing why it hasn't been done. We're all flabbergasted.
So what would happen? This will be forwarded to the full board?
Well, first we will take a vote.
Executive? I'll take.
Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Have a second?
Second, I'll second that.
Okay, anyone opposed? Okay, that means everybody is a yes, correct?
Yes.
Yes?
Correct.
Yes?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, our people's is on. Okay, so that means we have a resolution that we will be bringing to the committee, to the executive, well, not bringing. This is what you want to know. We don't have to bring it to the executive board. When it passes in our committee, it goes straight to the general for a vote. We can tell them that this is what we did, but it's only when like we have a resolution that is either late or we don't have time to vote on it or things like that, but we really want to get it in that month, we can bring it to the executive board and then we can vote at the executive board to bring the resolution in the general. Okay, so next month we'll have some people, but it's past 9 o'clock, so I don't remember who they are. So do I have a motion to adjourn? Do I have a second? Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Okay, y'all.